Welcome back as we examine living a life of encounter. My friends, I think of the Apostle Paul, and we know that prior to his conversion, he was Saul of Tarsus, and he was a mean piece of work. He used to persecute Christians, put them in prison, watch them get stoned. He was vehemently anti-Christian. And for somebody like that, a gentle persuasion from one of the disciples was not going to do it. In fact, no amount of persuasion was going to do it. What Paul needed, or Saul of Tarsus at that time, what Saul needed was an encounter that he could not deny and would change his life forever. And my friends, that's exactly what God granted him. Jesus turns up one day on the road to Damascus in Acts chapter 9. You can read it in your own time, verses 1 to 9. And it's very dramatic stuff. There's a blinding light. And Saul is actually, he's blind. And it's a staggering thing. He fell to the ground, and this voice thunders at him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And Saul is terrified. He's struck blind. He's in the middle of the road, and he's crying out, my God, who are you? And he says, and the voice comes back, I'm Jesus. I'm the very one you're persecuting, and I'm the real thing. And so Saul has this incredible conversion. And we know God heals him and then commissions him, and he becomes a great apostle Paul. Now, my friends, why the dramatics? Why the incredible encounter? Well, because the radical nature of who God was calling Paul to be demanded the radical nature of the encounter that led to his commission. And so, friends, what I want you to see clearly today is the fact that even the hardest people in society, the most anti-person you can think of, if they have an ounce of crying inside of them for the truth, God can bring about the most life-changing encounter. My friends, when I read about Saul being transformed into the Apostle Paul, that gives me hope for almost anybody on the planet. As long as there's some inkling in there that actually is looking for truth. Whatever you do, don't confuse looking for knowledge with looking for truth. A lot of secular knowledge at the moment is available to bring down faith, to undermine the Christian conviction. But truth is a different thing. Truth is desiring the reality, the truth. And so deep down inside of Saul's heart, even though he was persecuting Christians, he thought he was doing the right thing. He had a sincerity about him, even though he was terribly wrong. So God brought about an encounter that utterly changed him, made him a transformer, changed forever what he was capable of. My friends, God can do the exact same thing for you. And it's my experience, 54 years serving the Lord, my experience is that is not a one-time experience. It's not just one time, that's it. Baptized in the Holy Spirit, speaking in tongues, moving in the power of God. That happened 54 years ago. I could go the rest of my life on that. No, I don't believe that. I believe that the Bible actually speaks about continually being filled with the Holy Spirit. I need an encounter with God that is not only daily, which we all need, but there are times in my life when such is the call, such is the commission, such is the challenge that now stands before me, that the only way I'm going to go through that, the only way I'm going to come victoriously out the other side of that, is if I have an encounter with God, an encounter with the Holy Spirit, and a fresh empowerment for the task. Now, let me remind you about the disciples. The disciples had been with Jesus for 3.5 years. They had witnessed miracles. They had performed miracles. They had been had incredible supernatural life, Jesus demonstrating it, teaching them the ways of God. They were incredibly well prepared. But there came a moment when God wanted their very local witness, their very personal and local conservative witness, comparatively to the world, and he wanted to change that to make these men and women people that would bring transformation over the entire globe. And so what does he do? He doesn't give them additional teaching, though that's a good thing. He arranges an encounter. And in Acts chapter 1, we find that these disciples are gathered together in this upper room, and Jesus said, you've got to do that. Why? So that you can receive power. And the word dunamis there is the word for miraculous, supernatural power and force. When will that happen? When the Holy Spirit's come upon you, when you've had a fresh encounter. And then you will be witnesses to me, not only in Jerusalem, but Judea, Samaria, to the end of the earth. You'll be living signposts to who God really is. Your life will direct people to me. This is what Jesus was saying. Now I want you to get a hold of this, because to me it was quite life-changing. Because these disciples were a micmash mob. They were all sorts: fishermen, tax collectors. They were, all sorts of different dispositions. Now, when Jesus is crucified, and yes, he's risen again, but the disciples, you've got to get a hold of this. The disciples went from being huddled together in a room, uncertain of their future, full of questions, scared stiff that they'd be found out and someone might knock on the door. They went from the uncertain kind of fearful group of people, they went from that to being world changers, to being planet changers that could speak in different languages that they'd never been taught, perform miracles, do supernatural signs, and you think, what happened to them? They had an encounter, a supernatural encounter that fundamentally changed who they were, therefore what they were capable of. An encounter that actually qualified them, empowered them to become transformers to society. My friend, it was the encounter that empowered them to become. And it has always been that way. My friends, it is the same way for you. If you have an encounter with the Holy Spirit, a fresh moment of unconditional surrender and hunger and thirst after God, and you encounter him in that way, I'm telling you, two things are going to happen. That encounter will fundamentally change who you are and therefore what you're capable of, and two, it will empower you to become a transformer to your society and to your environment. I want to look at some more examples of encounter in our next clip together. God bless.